right, Adam, you got the next one?
Yes, I do. So this news piece is going to be really good news for all those people out there who are worried about your motion sickness and if it's preventing you from experiencing all that VR has to offer. Researchers from several different universities in both the US and Taiwan have found that haptic feedback from the VR headset itself can significantly reduce the amount of motion sickness you feel. So, in this experiment, these researchers got a number of participants with a Vive Pro, and they hooked up different haptic feedback or haptic devices all over the headset, sat them down, and then took them around a virtual environment. And when they did that, they found that these haptic devices actually really, really reduce the amount of motion sickness that these participants feel. And so it could lead to, with any luck, the findings from the study could lead to a lot more robust motion sickness preventing designs in the future for VR headsets.
Mm-hmm. And I believe they were testing for like not just motion sickness. They were testing for immersion and what was it specifically? It was immersion
and discomfort.
And discomfort, right?
Yes.
So not only are people that like it, because I mean, for I think most VR users, you've already gotten your VR legs. You know, motion sickness, unless the game's poorly made, is not something you worry about too much anymore.
Well, this is actually an interesting point that I was worried about too. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No worries.
But yeah. VR legs, like a lot of us gamers here, we've been in VR quite a bit. We're doing this whole podcast in VR. We sort of know our way around a VR environment. The interesting thing about this one, though, is that the participants couldn't change the way that they were moving. They had no control over the direction they were going and how fast or anything. And so it's almost like riding a roller coaster. And I find that when I'm in that situation in VR, the motion sickness the discomfort does get a lot more extreme. And so having it help with that sort of discomfort could be a really big deal.
Yeah. You are right. That is a pretty, when I say a poorly made game, that typically is an example of it, is the moment a VR game moves you without you providing input.
Mm-hmm.
That's like an instant stomach curdle.
Yeah,
depending on, you know, your mileage may vary on that, but yeah, this is to me, this most reminds me, as someone who doesn't get a lot of VR motion sickness these days, and I'm really glad for people that do have motion sickness that this type of technology is coming out. But to me, this is like if you ever played just like Call of Duty or something, and the difference between playing with and without the rumble on a controller can be kind of night and day. Like it added it was just such a simple thing, but them adding rumble to controllers, and as it's gotten more and more precise, is such an added experience. These days, I keep my Xbox One controller plugged in so that when I'm playing games that support it, it still rumbles. And I'll still feel it on my desk, and it's so great.
That's pretty creative.
Yeah, it's neat. And you know, there's a lot you can like get like a vibration backpack, and like there's a lot of ways people do it. But
yeah, I believe Jay's tried a lot of the haptic feedback stuff.
I have a few things, but before I jump down that rabbit hole, what I'm curious, Destiny, you're probably the only one of us who still doesn't have a great set of VR legs. So what do you think about this news?
Actually, when I first read that, I was so excited because, yeah, not only for people, because I think that's going to be a huge turnoff for people getting into VR originally, because a lot of them don't understand that in most cases, over time, it generally does get a little bit better. But even for people like me who wear, especially with like the locomotion, like it can still be there, then it's amazing. I hope they really do continue to look into that, and that's something that a feature that they can add later on. I think it'll definitely help out.
Mm-hmm.
So something that's really interesting to me about all this, I actually have 3 sets of headphones, mostly just for when I demo people in VR. So the headphones that I love using, they're called Sony Pulse Elite headphones. They have a rumble pack in each side of the headphones, and it's based off audio cues. It's not essentially actual haptics. But what I've noticed for me, I crank up that, and then when there's an explosion or a gunshot in the game, it just adds this little bit of immersion directly on your head that is so amazing for the gameplay value. But they're over the ear cans, they isolate out sound, And with those vibrations, people I've put in them that have any sort of proneness to motion sickness, they get sick really fast with them on. And
Really?
I was always curious as to why. So I'm wondering, it says in this article that they put them on the headset and not necessarily on their ears. But I figured it had to do something with now you're actually shaking their inner ears basically on
Oh,
top of this motion sick
right.
environment. And it made them way more sick. So the headphones that I typically use for any noobs are the Riggs Plantronics 4 VR because they specifically called it, they used an open ear design because they claimed that if someone has the ability to actually hear their surroundings outside of VR, it helps them maintain a better equilibrium inside and they won't get sick as quickly.
Oh,
So
that's interesting.
I've
I'm
heard that
very
too.
curious. Yeah. I'm very curious about what this means. Do I think that this is the end all be all? I don't know. But the thing that everyone seems to forget, do you know when the original Doom game came out back in the day, the original first person shooters, people got sick as hell playing that game, playing it on a
I
screen.
think I remember that. Yeah. I
Tons
mean,
of people.
I
Yeah.
didn't play it, but you heard
Tons
about
of
it.
people got motion sick. And so people think, oh, VR makes people sick. No one's ever going to want to play it. First person shooters used to do the same thing. The technology had to advance. The frame rates had to get better. It had to stop stuttering. We're going to see a lot coming, I think, in this way of how do we make people not get sick anymore. I think haptics are a part of it, but I think a big part that I've seen a lot of people trying to do, they think if the people's feet are moving, that'll help. So we have
Mhm.
VR treadmills, we have 3D rudders and all these things. This is the first time I've seen anyone try to experiment with anything actually on your head. And I'm
Mhm.
curious to see if this really continues to work or if they start to get too close to the ears, if this is going to mess people up further. I don't know.
That's
All
true.
right.
Yeah, if they can get that working, it would definitely, like I said, help new people or people who are still getting motion sickness. But not only that, but keep them in the game longer.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
it would be pretty beneficial all around.
And I will
So, yeah.
say, I'd much prefer this rather than a treadmill.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's definitely, it seems like a way more affordable option, or even like space saving option.
Mhm. See, I just want to be able to like all those like more sim games I have. Like, I want to just be able to sit in my Elite Dangerous game and just like be boosting up my frame shift drive and bounce through space like yes with some vibrations
Exactly.
going on in my headset. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Mhm.